Hello and welcome to another video. There's a hell of a lot to discuss today with Manchester United. Huge news that I'll get into the normal videos and lives throughout the rest of the day. Plenty to talk about and plenty of implications to the overall squad balance and what United will be doing in the market moving forward and for next season. However, I wanted to make this video to talk specifically about Bryan Mbeumo and why he is such a good fit at United and how he's such a good fit with Matheus Cunha, who they've already signed. Now, obviously, the deal for Bryan Mbeumo is not yet done. United still need to agree a fee with Brentford. However, they will be aware of the terms that are on offer. Um, it was already acknowledged by Thomas Frank and Brentford that Bryan Mbeumo could leave this summer, and they likely already have some kind of agreement. Many clubs are already vying for his signature with the knowledge that he needed to make a choice, and then you would go to Brentford in order to kind of finalize a deal. The power that players have to say, look, I want that club. There's no competition, keeps the price down to a reasonable level. And Brentford being a club that does need to sell players from time to time to maintain, to be very fair, their impressive run in the Premier League is of note. So it's expected that United should get a deal done for him, though, of course, they still need to work on that fee. They do have the finances in place to be able to likely make a deal for him at the right amount, as long as it doesn't get to something crazy. But in the end, I think we're expecting somewhere in the range of 50 plus a little some add-ons is likely to get it done, maybe 50 plus 5 or 50 plus 10. And that is something United should be able to do even before some sales, given that it'll also be paid in installments and they had some money available and things like that after missing on Delap. So that brings us to why Bryan Mbeumo, outside of the how Bryan Mbeumo, seeing off competition from Newcastle, Arsenal, and Tottenham in particular. Three clubs with Champions League, three clubs that approached Bryan Mbeumo, one in Newcastle that he was actually pretty interested in, but in the end decided to choose United. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know exactly what they're saying, but they convinced Lenny Oro to come instead of going to Madrid. They convinced Ruben Amorim to leave his comfortable job at Sporting, where he has all the love and support in the world after helping bring them back to multiple titles and was in the middle of an undefeated season so far that ended for them in another title, by the way, to join United's shit show in the middle of November and 13th place and see a pretty rough end to the season. They've convinced Matheus Cunha to join United over anybody else easily without even question. And by June 2nd, they had already then convinced Bryan Mbeumo, despite the lead from clubs like Newcastle jumping in on it. So, whatever they're doing, I'm here for it. And let's talk about Mr. Bryan Mbeumo. Okay. So he chooses United. We're going to talk about his fit and the massive boost to the attack that we get with him and Cunha together. Now, as we know, and as I've talked about a lot, the biggest priority in the team and the major assessment overall has been goals, 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 goals. So big step in that direction moving for these two players. What does he bring to the table? Where does he play? How does he play? What does he do? Well, Bryan Mbeumo, 20 goals on the season, 7 assists, 17 big chances created, 70 chances created, 50 to 55 million expected fee. If we take a look at his heat map here, one of the things you'll notice is that while yes, he is a wide player, he does go and drift into the half spaces over here as well pretty regularly, and plays in somewhat of your traditional right side number 10 areas where he's flexible to go out wide, but less fixated out wide than, let's go back, than you would have seen with at times like Ahmad, who very much just runs right along the touchline and in. This half space play, this dropping in a bit more all over the place is certainly, a hallmark of his game. So he should fit in really, really smoothly into the right side. And I would be surprised should he end up playing anywhere else. Technically, he probably has the energy, the work rate, the legs, and the know-how to do the right wing back in a pinch if he wanted to. If you wanted to toss him out there, and and get Bruno back into the 10 or Ahmad or Mount or somebody, then you could. But I'd be surprised if they went forward with something like that because the right 10 is pretty much made for him. When you look at the numbers, it gets pretty wild. Even with Bruno and Ahmad, when you look at the games in the 10 for the players, um, Bruno or Ahmad plus Garnacho since Amram. I mean, it's pretty crazy. 10 goals was what they had. You add Mbeumo and Cunha, you're talking 35. 5 assists to 13. 8 big chances created to 33. 60 chances created to 121. So a massive, massive upgrade on the overall performance of the 10s to what was there before, frankly. We go back to this chart. I want to highlight, the shooting and all of that. And this was actually a little bit before the end of the season. So Mbeumo even has more goals. But what we saw at that time is that Mbeumo is a really, really efficient shooter. He's not a super high volume shooter. He scores a lot of goals per shot, and he plays a lot of minutes. So, Cunha played quite a bit less minutes. There's a couple bans and things like that, but they shoot at about the same level in terms of success, goals per shot. So another really, really solid shooter in Mbeumo who shoots very, very well and finishes his chances extremely well. And in addition, just going back to this one about we don't get the ball to the forwards and how we'll get touches, we know that that's wrong. We can see here that attacking pens and production and Mbeumo and Cunha are about the same. They both receive the ball about the same amount, which is about half what Garnacho receives and even less than Ahmad. So Mbeumo and Cunha should expect to have the ability to touch the ball in the final third a lot more than they have, and so you could expect to even see their production go up. In addition, what I do want to say here, though, is Mbeumo as opposed to Cunha in terms of complementary profiles. Mbeumo plays a little bit more as the outlet in his Brentford semi-attacking team. So while Cunha drops deep into the middle thirds for build-up a lot, which you want, and Mbeumo is very capable in dropping in a bit and doing that, he's also been a lot of times the outlet or one of the main outlets in Brentford, playing a very direct transitional style. So he's also good at receiving the ball on the run, receiving the ball with pace, receiving the ball going forward. So we will have the capability of still utilizing our 10s as an outlet with Mbeumo, where he does that a bit more than Cunha, who is very much more drop into the middle third and pick up the ball. So very complementary profiles in that respect, but still a player who's quite skilled in the build up and alongside Cunha expected to increase his production by seeing more of the ball. Where is Mbeumo best at operating? Well, let me shrink myself down here for a minute and take a look at this, and let's move me over here. So if we look at the numbers and look at it, he's a bit more of an outlet than Cunha. He picks up the ball more forward. So, as I kind of showed on the last one, he's receiving more progressive passes. He's a powerful and effective dueler, great turn on the ball, quick and strong. We can see that while he's not a high volume dribbler, in part that is stylistic because Brentford play a pretty transitional style, a little more low possession. His success rate in dribbling is very, very high. He doesn't lose the ball much. He's got, he's in the higher percentile for forwards on dribbling. You can see he's got very high numbers on carrying it into the penalty area, not so much carries into the final third. So my point being, he's less the guy that's dropping into the midfield and picking it up and carrying it forward, and more the guy picking it up in the final third and carrying it into the penalty area, a little bit more of a final third kind of specialist. That being said, I want to make it really clear, he's really good on the ball. And so he can and has and certainly is able to drop in to the midfield. It's a bit more stylistic why he does less of it. He's an excellent finisher when we look at his shooting. Shot on target percentage is really high, and one of the reasons I like that is that um, XG overperforming your goals, fine. Those are things that are maybe can be a concern when someone is finishing, that they probably won't finish quite as high as they were before, quite as high as they have been. If they're finishing double their XG, you'd expect it to go down a little. But a key part of this is that he does get the ball on target at a very, very high rate. So he's a good shooter, and the ball's usually hitting the keeper or the net. Not usually, but at a higher level, at a high percentage. So that's a good thing, and that generally means they're always going to be semi-productive. It's the worst possible outcome from a shot is you miss entirely, because that means it's ending up in the stands, a goal kick, etc. A shot on target at a high percentage is very good. Even if you don't score, you can get corners, you can get rebounds, you can get all of that. So when you're shooting, shots on target, I do think matter a lot for obvious reasons. He's more of a final third specialist than Cunha, but is very capable of receiving in the midfield and interplaying. Brentford being more counterattacking and transitional focused than, say, Wolves. So some of the lower progression stats are probably just down to style. Because again, if you look at it, Brentford don't have the ball that much. They're not a dominant team. So the fact that his stats are decent in the carries and really good in carries in the penalty area just tell you that they should all level up at United, and his skill set will translate well to picking up the ball from deeper. He is a high volume chance creator as well when adjusted for possession, and an excellent crosser of the ball. So this is an interesting thing that I noted in looking into more where the chances he's creating are coming from, what he's doing with them. You can kind of note he's really high on expected assists, one of the most creative players, high on key passes. A lot of crosses. Look, crosses as a percentile, 82nd percentile. If you look into the stats a bit more, you'll also see a decent number of dead balls, things like that, free kicks, corners. So he crosses the ball a fair bit, and a lot of his chances have come from crosses as well, even though, there's more in terms of passing in general. He is a very good crosser of the ball, so you kind of want to make sure you get somebody on the end of it. With Cunha and Mbeumo, you end up with the two most productive wingers in the league behind Mo Salah. If we look up top, you'll see Salah, then striker, Mbeumo, striker, Cunha. So that's quite impressive. 35 goals between them, 13 assists, 32 big chances created, 121 chances created. Fourth highest expected assists in the league for Mbeumo with 10.38, and that puts him fourth in the league behind Salah, Palmer, Bukayo Saka. So that is really, really quite impressive. Dynamic forward combinations with Cunha and Mbeumo. A lot of complementary skills, both excellent on the ball, good shooters, creative. Mbeumo maybe a little bit more direct and pacey in the way that he plays than Cunha, who's probably a bit better dropping into the middle thirds and moving the ball up the pitch. So really good combos there, but obviously as well some of that stylistic, and Mbeumo certainly more than capable. However, what I would say here is that given the way that the chance creation occurs from Mbeumo, crosses, and even Cunha on this front, I really do think getting a top class finisher is vital to make this work. I'm not opposed to the false nine dynamic with Joshua Zirkzee, and I actually think it shows a lot of merit as well, and is something that could really make a big difference to everything at this point in time. It would look good. There'd be a really good interplay, really good technical ability. However, I do think that you're missing out on, if you watch a lot of Mbumo's game, cutting in the top of the box and hitting that cross in, you want a striker there. You need somebody in the box with top instincts, to get on the end of a lot of the chances. And the same goes for Cunha. Both Mbeumo and Cunha were really good creating chances for a striker, with Strand Larsen and Wissa having really decent goal scoring records for their respective teams. So I think that somebody needs to get in there, and I think Xerxes capable of scoring 10 goals, but he's obviously not necessarily going to be the guy crashing the box to be desperate to get on the end of Mbeumo crosses or low cutbacks and things like that. So we'll see how that develops, but certainly it's a really good combination, and the play could be really good. But a top class finisher would make a world of difference. Getting somebody in there who just gets on the end of those chances and shoots. And given both of the skill sets of Cunha and Mbeumo, you probably don't need another player dropping in so much. You probably don't need another player who's you know, crazy dribbling out of, into the third or something like that. Getting somebody who can receive it in the space, and the more typical, prototypical Amarim striker like a Jokerish is probably the absolute best fit to go alongside um, these two players. I could see a false nine working, but I can also see it somewhat somewhat occupying the same spaces, as Cunha is a little bit more of a drop deep player than, say, when you look at that dynamic that Liverpool had, than Sadio Mane, who really did play like a striker in his direct running. And Bumo is more similar, I'd say, to both Salah and Mane than Cunha is. But regardless, huge upgrades just on their own to the goals, and I think immediately statistically take United from what was the 19th rated. I mean, even with Xerxes as a striker, and you look at the numbers, it takes them from a 19th rated goal scoring front three to, I think, about the third rated front three in terms of goal scoring. And the rest of the team actually scored quite a few goals as well. So big difference either way. You can see exactly why they're wanted and see exactly how they can play together and how they fit perfectly in Amarim's system. What comes next will be really, truly interesting, with Bruno set to stay and rebuff that Saudi interest. So we'll have to see there. But that's my talk on Bryan Mbeumo, why he fits, why they want him. Now United obviously have to go get that fee done, but they are expecting to be able to get it done um, at this point. So we should be seeing Cunha and Mbeumo line up opposite each other in the tens at Old Trafford next season. And I don't honestly think you could have gotten better for this system, for this team, and just in general, getting the two most productive wingers in the Premier League after Mo Salah. Not much more you can ask for than that. Okay, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.